Well, hello friends, and welcome to Ariel's Twilight Years, how to be a really old model. I'm going to talk about some kinky stuff today. When I started my channel, I wasn't expecting to really talk about kinky things because I felt as though probably I needed to stay discussing subjects specifically relevant to being a professional model. But then I came across a subject that is very much relevant to being a professional model in the kinky sphere. So this is as a result of conversations with many of my friends and colleagues over the last few weeks, including Dee Williams, Howell Phillips, my husband, hello, Confess to Miss Zoe, Zoe Page, Anthony P. Scott. The subject I want to talk about is subspace, subdrop and aftercare. Although I don't really want to talk about just from a submissive point of view, I want to talk from a participant and performer point of view because it's quite a complicated topic, and I'm hoping that this video will be the beginning of a discussion between other people in my industry about how we should do this stuff. So let's get started. My first significant BDSM experiences were all at professional shoots, but it's only been recently that I've realised how unusual that is. Most kinky people begin exploring their sexuality in private, which is honestly probably a more rational choice. I don't recommend you necessarily copy me unless you have no privacy requirements whatsoever. Consequently, many people either find a regular partner or partners, or they discover a community of people to play with at social events. Especially in the latter case, newcomers are likely to become educated about what it feels like to do intense BDSM with relative strangers, the emotional state that doing so can engender, and what to expect, both good and bad, in the hours and days following a session. Educated social BDSM players often become conversant with the idea of aftercare, checking in with each other in the aftermath of a play session and helping to meet each other's resultant physical and emotional needs. But that's not necessarily the case for those of us doing BDSM at work. Until recently, the idea that professional performers might feel a little down or shaken up post-shoot hadn't really occurred to me. And I certainly hadn't considered whether producers had any kind of duty of care to their performers once the shoot had concluded and everyone had gone home. And then a couple of things changed for me. Firstly, around 2 years ago, I started shooting more intense BDSM work, partly because I'd become more confident with my sexuality, so I stopped worrying what other people would think of me, and partly because I'd networked enough to find people I was comfortable doing that more ambitious work with. Secondly, I started hiring my friends to perform with me, so I found myself feeling a sense of responsibility for their well-being in a way that I'd not really experienced before. And the first time I hired a friend who'd not done any on-camera BDSM before, it made me think, what are our responsibilities to each other when we put our kinks on screen? I want to make a quick disclaimer here. I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I'm figuring this stuff out as I go along, just like everyone else. I can't speak for my whole industry or my community, and I don't mean to be prescriptive. Plenty of people shoot BDSM content every day without experiencing any altered emotional state at the time or afterwards. And plenty of excellent producers don't offer much in the way of aftercare. I'm just sharing some experiences and opinions as a way of hopefully starting a conversation within my industry about how best to look after each other and help everyone to enjoy their work. So, first of all, post-shoot drop. At its most basic level, BDSM activities can leave everyone involved, whether dominant or submissive, in an altered mental state. For subs, this can be partially as a result of being tied up and hurt, but for everyone, the role play can suck you further in than you were expecting, and it can sometimes end up feeling a bit more real than you'd really envisaged. Which can all be very pleasant if you're doing an affectionate, romantic or pleasure-based scenario. It might be a little bit harder to deal with if you're shooting something that's meant to look traumatic or non-consensual or adversarial. As a mainstream actor, I knew that improvisation during rehearsals sometimes left people feeling a little emotionally raw, and I lost count of how many times co-performers thought they'd fallen in love with people they were playing romantic roles opposite. And the first time I experienced what I'd now maybe call subdrop was after a mainstream TV shoot. I'd been cast as one of Casanova's lovers in a TV docudrama. I was a recent drama school graduate and this was my first TV job. We shot on location in a famous English stately home. The actor playing Casanova was gorgeous and friendly. All our scenes involved kissing and groping and eventually simulating wildly passionate sex in a grand four-poster bed. with security guards stationed around the room to stop the cast and crew damaging the art on the walls. I stayed in a hotel, I made friends with the crew, I enjoyed having my hair and makeup done and being dressed in beautiful corsets. And then my part in the job was over. The next actress arrived to shoot her scenes with Casanova the next day. I went back home to my one-room flat on Hanger Lane roundabout, which didn't have a four-poster bed, to my real-life boyfriend, who was not Casanova. I washed my hair and all the ringlets I'd had from my role washed out, and I was back in my ordinary 2002 clothes with my ordinary young actor's hair and my ordinary modern-day life. And I felt as though nothing interesting would ever happen to me again. That's because I didn't know that one day I'd be a really, really, really old model with a YouTube channel. But anyway, despite not knowing this, I eventually recovered. And looking back, I remember how much it helped that the actor who played Casanova took my number and stayed in touch with me. It was nice to feel as though I'd made a new friend and that the experience hadn't been entirely ephemeral. So, when I moved from mainstream acting to BDSM film work, perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised by the highs and lows that performers and producers sometimes experience during and after shoots. Briefly, these are some of the things I sometimes feel, and I'm sure they'll be familiar to other kinky people. Firstly, anticlimax, the feeling that nothing will ever match up to what you just experienced, and that all you want to do is carry on doing what you were doing, not going back to work, loading the dishwasher, going to the gym or paying bills like a normal person. Secondly, loneliness, missing the heightened version of yourself and your co-performer that you created together for the production, and feeling sad that the relationship you put on screen isn't real, it was just for the cameras. And thirdly, fear that you didn't do a good enough job, that you might not be invited back, and that if you're not, you won't get to experience all the things that you enjoyed again. And that you might not get to meet the people you enjoyed them with again either. If anything went wrong during the shoot, or you weren't able to do everything that was planned, this anxiety and guilt can feel quite overwhelming. From speaking to other performers, I know I'm not the only person to struggle with some of these feelings, but I'd always told myself that I didn't need aftercare. I'm a professional, I want to be low maintenance, I want to provide a reliable service, and I want my emotions to be under control, while I'm at work at least. Being emotionally needy doesn't fit with my desire to represent myself as a professional who can be guaranteed to do a good job. But on the other hand, one of the things that makes me good at my job is the fact that I am quite sensitive and I can access my emotions easily. That's how I deliver performances that hopefully make people feel something when they watch the finished production. And it's not easy to provide on-screen emotion but off-screen calm, vulnerability and invulnerability, immersion and professionalism at the same time. As my career has lengthened, it's often become the case that I'm the most experienced performer on set, which makes me feel as though I should be the lowest maintenance person on set too. Since I only play submissive roles, within the scene the other performer or the producer will often be in the dominant role, so they're responsible for my safety and well-being. But off-screen I feel a responsibility to look after them and to make sure that they're coping okay with what we're doing in front of the cameras. Since I'm the one with more performance experience, that feels like my job. So I've mostly figured out keeping myself more or less professional on set. Sometimes some activities make me cry and it might take me a minute or two to stop crying once the film is over, but I try to recover as quickly as possible and reassure everyone that I'm all right. Sometimes I'm a bit shaky, so I might need to sit down for a minute, but my intention is to bounce back as quickly as possible and be the best team player that I can be. I certainly don't want the top or the dom to feel guilty about the things their character has been doing to me in the scene. I want them to finish the shoot feeling good about themselves, and I'm sure most professionals will share that desire. For me, if sub-drop arrives, it's likely to be the next day, especially if I'm alone. Sometimes it just takes the form of being tired and under-energised and a bit flat for a couple of days. Occasionally it feels as though I'm having some kind of mental breakdown and that I'll never recover. And it's that I want to avoid, both for myself and for the people I work with. Because if I can't control my mental state, I'm not suitable for more ambitious BDSM work, and I want to be. So I've been thinking about the things that have helped me feel good in the aftermath of shoots over the years, and the things I want to do for the people I now hire. Two of the first spanking producers I ever worked with were Dallas Spanks Hard and Michael Stamp for Bars and Stripes. Both of them were in the habit of taking the cast and crew out for dinner after shoots, which always made me feel very much appreciated and as though we were all part of a team. It also meant that I felt as though the producers were my friends, which stopped me feeling like a disposable commodity. When I started producing my own work, I decided to do that as often as possible after shoots, and at the very least I made sure that there was time to have tea and cake and talk through the shoot together afterwards. So I feel as though just making some time to be together out of character, not in your on-screen persona anymore, is quite valuable for making everyone just come back down to earth together in a gentle and kindly fashion. Which brings me on to feedback. Some of the best producers I worked with early on in my career were very generous with writing to me immediately after the shoot to tell me that I'd done well. I treasured those emails as a young, inexperienced performer, and it's something I've tried to adopt as a producer myself. Obviously, praise is only valuable if it's sincere, so I try to be specific about things that they did that I liked and what the high points of the scene were for me. However experienced I become, I continue to value this kind of feedback very much from my employers, especially since I tend to worry in the aftermath about whether I did a good enough job. Which leads on to public feedback. Seeing images from my shoots appearing online alongside comments from the producer about how much they enjoyed it is very reassuring. When the experience of shooting is over, seeing the audience response to the result is quite affirming. So good screenshots, sincere praise of my co-performers and tagging people correctly in promotional material is valuable. It feels especially important when the work is beyond the levels of intensity or severity that are normal for me. Sometimes when fans of my softer work see movies like this, they blame the producer or the top. So making it public that I enjoyed the experience, liked the individuals involved, and that some of the ideas may have been mine, feels like a good way to protect my co-performers as well as to reassure them that I appreciate them. Since seeing the results of the work I've been involved with helps me feel better when I'm sad that a shoot's over, I especially appreciate the producers who share it with me. Early in my career, that often included producers generously giving me membership of their sites. I remember Howell doing that for me for Restrained Elegance at the beginning of my career. Now that people have moved away from that business model, it means sending me a copy of the finished film. Not many people do this, and many models aren't interested in seeing the results anyway, but since I love it when people do that, I offer to send my co-performers and crew copies of the film as well. For some of us, a permanent record of a transient experience can be reassuring, makes us feel extra appreciated, and reiterates for us that we did a decent job. Everyone's different, of course, so this is difficult to discuss in some ways, because I'm aware that I might come across like I'm doing quite insane overkill. For most productions, having the producer write to say thanks via email and post something positive on social media is more than enough reassurance for me post-shoot. But for work that was especially intense or challenging or intimate, I've always appreciated it when people have checked in with me afterwards to make sure that I'm healing okay and that I'm happy with how the shoot went. And this for me has ended up at the heart of how I avoid the worst sub-drop for me and hopefully for my co-performers and friends. Being treated like a person as well as a product is a lovely warm feeling. BDSM shoots involve creating personal connections that may feel real in the moment, but that are transient, and when the shoot's over, I sometimes feel the loss. I don't want my co-performers to feel like that, and though our BDSM connection may only be on screen, the friendships that we discover as a result can be real. So as I've moved towards shooting more physically and emotionally challenging work, I've shrunk the list of people that I do it with. That way, staying in touch after a shoot is natural because these people are my friends, and the quality of the work gets better when it's done with friends as well, I think. People less emotionally sensitive than I am probably do a better job of working with a large number of people, but I've discovered personally that I like having a porn family. When I was talking this over with my porn wife Zoe Page, hello, are you watching this? Probably not. You probably listened to me talking plenty already and you don't need a monologue. Hi! We were discussing whether our respective husbands would know what we needed in terms of aftercare. And we realised that possibly they wouldn't, because essentially our whole relationship with them is aftercare. I can't marry everyone I do BDSM scenes with, and I very much doubt they want to marry me, although I'm lovely. But the friendships can facilitate aftercare just the same way, and hopefully that way we can all look after each other. I always think of the line from Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, everyone belongs to everyone else. That's because I'm quite pretentious. But it feels true of my BDSM industry network. Perhaps we don't belong to each other, but we're responsible for each other's experiences, so it feels good to look after each other. And while the work we shoot might not always look very kind and gentle, treating each other with kindness and courtesy offset feels perhaps even more important as a result. Now, I'm aware that this approach can easily veer into the territory of being quite creepy. Needy and quite overfamiliar. Not everyone who shoots with me will want to be my friend, apparently. And just because a scene was intense for me, it doesn't mean it was for them. So I do try to be cautious and tailor my aftercare to the individuals I work with. Not everyone will share my pornotopian vision, and I realise that having someone tediously insist that we have a real connection can be quite scary and awful. I do try not to do that, having had plenty of experience of that from my co-performers when I was a single new model. Similarly, it can probably come across as dreadfully patronising, like, oh, are you okay from doing such a mind-blowingly amazing scene with someone as gorgeous as me? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, I'd forgotten all about it actually. But on balance, I'd rather make myself look rabidly patronising or a little bit emotionally unstable than make someone else feel uncared for. As I said, I'm still figuring this stuff out, and I'm perhaps an unusually sensitive and emotionally malleable human being. So I'd love to hear your take on aftercare, especially if you work in my industry or in a related field. Let me know in the comments below, and if it turns into a lively discussion, I'll film a follow-up with other people's points of view included as well. Thank you to everyone who has talked this subject over with me over the last few weeks. Please do comment. Please also like and subscribe. I know everyone always says that at the end of videos and I never want to say it, but because I'm trying to sell a book at the moment, having visible numbers of people interacting with me online, it makes more difference than normal. So thank you as always for listening. I know that was probably quite a niche subject, but it was something that I really wanted to talk about because sub drop or post-shoot drop can be quite debilitatingly horrible under some circumstances. I'm still not quite sure why sometimes it can be so bad, but anything I can do to help myself and others from experiencing that sort of horrible feeling after doing something that's lovely, I would like to do. So thank you, please come back next month, like and subscribe. I already said that, how rabid. Bye-bye now, bye-bye. I always kissed my, what am I doing? Like I'm making some sort of sex video. Bye-bye. Now sometimes I get confused between the various versions of myself. The YouTube version isn't meant to show her panties and isn't meant to do kissing at the camera.